All right, everyone. As the editor-in-chief here at the Babylon Bee, time for our comedy pitch meeting. All right, Greg, what do you got? Uh, 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 liberals like abortions. Oh, great. Good job. Cindy?
Black people talk black.
Excellent. Good job. All right, Miller, what do you got over there? Okay. I've been working on this for a minute, and, hear me out. Liberals get vaccines. Excellent. Good. This is comedy gold, everybody. Okay, Dave, what do you got over there? Liberals are afraid of guns. Excellent. This is so good. Oh my god. I can feel the comedy. Can't you guys feel the comedy? We are the greatest satire website on the face of the planet. Larry, what you got? Come on. Give it to me.
Okay, let's see here. They took a lot of the funniest ones. I've got it. Women are women.
Excellent. Oh my god, you can just feel the comedy writing itself. All right, great job, everybody. Everybody take 5. Wait, I got one more. Dylan, okay, you're the new guy here. Let's hear it out.
Elon Musk is the best.
Oh, you know what, Dylan? I knew I made the right call hiring you. All right, everyone, break for lunch. Comedy writes itself. Welcome to the show. Hello, and welcome back to Ruben Uncut. Today's topic: the Babylon Bee and why they are bad satire, if you can call them satire at all. All right, as you know, satire is something that I talk about a lot on this podcast because it's an art form that I'm fascinated by, especially its ability to confuse the plebeians. You see, satire is kind of like parody. Well, sort of. Parody is a satire that has no point and breaks its own reality. Satire, however, is meant to be a mocking reflection of reality. And therefore, truth is part of the comedy that is part of satire. The point of satire is to not just tell a joke, but to impart some type of truth about society, life, or whatever it is that you are particularly satirizing. Now, there's a lot more to satire than this, which I've talked about in a number of episodes. Today, we're going to be looking at a sketch from Babylon Bee, and we're going to be talking about this sketch via the Fair Use Act. Wait, is it an act? Fair use, whatever that is. Because we've got to go to the source. We've got to break down one of their sketches to talk about why it's absolute dog trash. Like, fucking the worst. So, let us begin. For those not familiar, the Babylon Bee is a satirical website and YouTube series. Or at least they like to think of themselves as being satirical. They're really just the conservative answer to comedy, and they spend most of their time making fun of wokeness. Never mind the fact that the courts have finally gotten the Republican Party to admit what wokeness is, and wokeness is now legally defined as just the awareness of systemic issues. That's what they said in court. The Republicans said that in court. So the Republicans are actively trying to cover up systemic issues or make you think that systemic issues are, not an issue. Of course, we live in a system, so we're going to have systemic issues, obviously. Wokeness is, in fact, a Republican dog whistle for, hey, we should censor anyone who criticizes the system. Welcome to reality. But we're not here to talk about that necessarily. Well, I mean, kind of. We are going to be talking about the Babylon Bee, who are terrible. Now, you may have seen this sketch. It was going around for a while. So you may already be familiar with this. I'm going to try and watch it in full screen, even though that's always a disaster on a Mac for some goddamn reason. I'll also try to describe it for those of you who are, listening to this where there's only audio. All right. We start off with a CRTV. No, not critical race. CRT TV. No, not a critical race theory TV, just an old one. And it appears to have a picture of Elon carrying a sink. I think that's Elon. But it reads, the title of the sketch that we are about to tear apart and dismember, like so many witches in the Salem witch trial. I don't know if that joke is tasteful. Too soon? Okay, let's continue. November 4th, the CRT TV has text that reads, November 4th, 2022. Twitter lays off nearly half of its workforce. The part it doesn't list here is rendering the site very buggy and inoperable. And the title of this sketch, I'm sorry, I forgot to read, is Fired Twitter Employees Applies for First Real Job. So right there, this is, even the title is dishonest. First of all, how do you define a real job? This is a concept. The way it's being presented here is specifically to try and get it to appeal to a working class person. Now, of course, technically, if we were to apply the logic of this type of first real job, it would mean that everyone who works in an office doesn't have a real job. So right there, that's fucking stupid. So let's proceed. November 13th, 2022, former Twitter employee Mandy Zanderton lands her first job interview. Now, of course, the conceit of this skit will be that they're applying at a factory job, which, totally makes sense. For someone who previously worked in computer sciences or whatever you call it when you do computer office work. So, because that's the thing, realistically speaking, okay, we have to buy into this part to get in on the joke. Because obviously, if you previously worked at Twitter, unless you were sick of Silicon Valley and wanted to get a different job because you were tired of that bullshit, you would probably get another job either, in Silicon Valley, where they'd probably be happy to be, oh man, a former Twitter employee. Oh man, yeah, you're a company that was on top for a long time. Sorry to hear that Elon Musk, what's wrong with me? Elon Musk is currently gutting your former company. Second of all, if they were applying for a job to factory, it would probably be to do, computer stuff, maybe data analysis, maybe, what is it? What do they call it? Data. It's technically a blue collar computer job. It's data entry. Data entry. They'd probably be applying for one of those jobs. So realistically, in the real world, that's what would happen. So we have to buy it. But for the purposes of both the message and the joke quotation marks of the sketch, we have to buy into the idea that they would apply at an inappropriate workplace, or a workplace that is just generally outside their normal range of experience.
Mr. Dunsinson?
Yeah, come on in. You're 20 minutes late.
Yeah, at Twitter we didn't have, start times. Schedules are a remnant of an oppressive colonialist regime.
Okay, that may be true. Okay, I'm just going to say it. That may be true of Twitter's. I don't know how they work their things. Silicon Valley are known for being very experimental in things like workplace schedules and whatnot. I myself have worked at jobs that had flex time. Well, actually, that's not true. I worked at a job that previously had flex time before they got rid of it. So flex time is not that weird of a thing. That being said, typically flex time doesn't apply to things like job interviews. Most people, even Twitter, I'm sure, expects you to show up on time for job interviews. Because why wouldn't they?
Oppressive colonialist regimes?
And of course, a Twitter employee is going to spout a bunch of, woke like buzzwords. Which, side note, Silicon Valley is weird. It's full of libertarians and fake hippies and stuff like that. I've never been to Silicon Valley. These are based on, what I'm saying is primarily based on articles I've read and the TV show Silicon Valley. So I probably know as much about Silicon Valley as the Babylon Bee does. Is what I'm saying. But they're clearly trying to paint the idea that someone who works at Twitter is automatically a woke, sort of liberal person, which is possible, but not necessarily, because not everyone who works at Twitter is going to be a monolith. Just because they don't like Elon Musk for gunning their company doesn't automatically mean that they were liberal, And a lot of people in Silicon Valley, especially near the top, aren't, or are a weird version of liberal. And there's certainly very few leftists, as far as I can tell, because Silicon Valley, despite being liberal, loves capitalism.
Okay. Well, look, the work here is pretty demanding. We need to find someone who can inspect all of our outgoing... Miss, are you okay?
She's hyperventilating into a bag for those listening. Listen to her reason why.
I'm sorry. I'm not really used to bosses using trigger words like demanding and inspect and work.
Like, the idea here that they're going to try to start projecting out is that a person who worked for Twitter didn't have a real job, didn't do real work. This is, of course, not true. Office work is still office work. You're still doing that. Silicon Valley has different concepts on work environment and work attitudes, but that doesn't mean people don't do real work. Programming is actually very demanding, and working with computers is a lot of, sometimes frequently, very mind-numbing work. The idea that this character is unfamiliar with work is a stretch, because you see, satire is meant to be a reflection of the concepts of reality, and these are concepts that are stretched too far. In fact, the problem with the Babylon Bee is that the Babylon Bee almost they claim to be a satire, but based on the material they produce, it seems more like they are a satire of a conservative satire, because the way they go about it is so fucking backwards. You see, we would have to believe that someone like this exists for this to be a successful satire.
But this is a job.
We don't say that either.
Then how do you...
Ridiculous. Is it possible that somewhere someone had a boss in Silicon Valley who was all weird and pseudo-intellectual and would do stuff like this? Totally possible. However, even the employees at that job would know they had a job, even if their boss was like some weird new age hippie dude who runs your computer company. He might not even want to call it a job. He would have some weird alternative word for it, but you, as the employee, the upper middle class white collar or blue collar coder, would know it's a job. You would still see job listings in newspapers. You probably got this not a job from a job listing.
You get any work? I mean, so how do you get any labor stuff, production, the handwork, not work, sorry, stuff?
Okay, now he's gonna struggle to come up with the right words because, as we all know, job interviewers totally do this and want to make you, the person they're testing, feel more comfortable. They're not dicks who want to, pressure you.
Stuff done. How do you get any stuff done?
Streep's got tons of stuff done on Twitter.
Oh, okay.
Now they're about to just have her describe what she did at Twitter, which is going to be 100% dishonest. You see, this is a sketch that has been written by someone's concept of what they think this job is like, not base it off of what this job is like. Allow us to continue.
Okay. Well, what would you say you did there?
I was responsible for so much as a content moderation specialist. Some days during my afternoon cornhole sesh, I'd get a text telling me I had to ban someone.
So then you'd have to actually like walk over to your computer and ban them?
No. I would just hit a button on my phone and then BAM! Babylon Bee, banned. Libs of TikTok, banned. Steve from Fruitport, Michigan, you know he banned.
This is not how content moderation works. I've read articles on content moderation, and I've heard, I believe it was an NPR art thing on how it works. And this is not how content moderation works. Content moderation, now to be fair, the article I read was about Facebook content moderators, so I don't know if Twitter has a different system. But realistically speaking, I can assume that people are trying to post the same type of garbage to Twitter that they're posting to Facebook. The problem is that right now in society, we have created this image of content moderation being people banning your uncle for being racist. However, this is only a small fraction of what content moderation does. Content moderators actually have a very high workload. They have to be working fairly frequently. Why? Because that's how you keep child pornography off of Facebook. That's how you keep hardcore pornography off of Facebook. That's how you keep jihadist beheadings off of Facebook. That's how you keep murders off of Facebook. And content moderators have to do this all the fucking time. They have to constantly be checking the algorithm and seeing what it has flagged and if it needs to be immediately removed. Now, I'm sure the algorithm, which is a newer thing for them flagging stuff, has made their jobs easier. Now, to be fair, to save money, these people are probably, just probably just have fewer of them doing the job. Because that's normally the way big companies work. Okay. Does she do this job from her phone? I don't know. That's weird. Normally, tech industries are based around computers. And normally, they'd have offices full of computers. And normally, your employees would work at the computers. Is it possible that they can do some of their job from their phone? I think probably. But, they probably have to log into work on a computer. They probably, I don't know what they actually do. My point is, I don't think Babylon Bee does either. And Babylon Bee doesn't even seem to have done a smidgen of tiny bit of research into the concept, because the way they're presenting content moderation is horseshit. It's bullshit. Okay? Content moderators have what is considered one of the most stressful, bad for your mental health jobs there is. Why? Because they're constantly exposed to things like snuff films and CP. Do you want that to be your job? Are you fucking stupid? This is it's actually a very important job. Now you may say, but free speech. But free speech absolutism means things like beheadings and child porn. Because free speech absolutists don't think outside of the speech that they're saying. And you can say, well, hold on, Ruben, those things cause harm and damage to society. But that argument can be made for a lot of things. You have to understand, many people would say that racism causes harm and damage to society. So therefore, racism could be argued to be in the same, maybe not, you could argue maybe it's not as horrific as those other two things I said. Some people know that it's pretty fucking horrific. But the point is that stuff like that getting banned can be made with the same argument. It's damaging to society. If we let racist ideas spread, it causes misinformation and misunderstanding and racial tension, which can disrupt society. Therefore, if you use the same reason of damage to society to justify the banning of things like executions and, generally speaking, disturbing pornography, then you can make the same argument against racism, against anti-trans statements, because these things also cause damage to society. Because they cause rifts in our society's population that are right now not being dealt with healthily because, well, it's a moral panic. Where was I? The point is that what they're saying about content moderators here, it's just not true. This is a hard job. This is a disturbing job. This is an upsetting job. This job is actually better satirized in an episode of South Park, where where the whole idea is that people are getting depressed and fucked up because they're seeing all the mean stuff people are saying about them online. So people start hiring other people, like Butters, to go through their comments and filter them so that they only hear the positive comments. And what happens is, as Butters is forced to see all the troll comments and the mean comments, his mental health slowly declines. And at the end of the episode, they get the idea that, hey, instead of learning a lesson at the end of the episode, because the other part of the episode is how Randy is tired of feeling guilty for not donating money at the Whole Foods to starving children in Africa. At the end of the episode, instead of anyone learning anything, Randy comes up with the great solution to their problem to essentially hire all the starving children in Africa to sort through all the mean tweets and comments so that they only hear the positive ones, thereby pushing the mental health problems off onto these kids who they will then pay. It's a much better example of making fun of the idea of content moderation, because the humor of it examines actual impacts of how content moderation hurts people. And it also examines how sometimes content moderation can also damage your perspective of the world if you over-censor things. Because in South Park, they're specifically censoring mean comments and criticism. Of course, obviously, Cartman is the person who comes up with this idea first. Content moderation is a serious, heavy job. And to sit around here and pretend like it's just a slacker job is disingenuous and dishonest, and automatically disqualifies this from being good satire, because this satire is not playing with truth. The satire here, or the attempt at satire, because you can't even call it satire, is propaganda. And propaganda can't be real satire necessarily.
And then back to cornhole.
All right, well, what else did you do there?
Drank like a sailor. They had wine on tap.
I don't know, so Silicon Valley, they do have very different attitudes towards work culture. This could be true, but that, in Mad Men, the executives also drank all the time. Just pointing that out. But once again, the idea here is to make these employees who have recently been fired or quit their jobs because of negative work environments, they have to look unsympathetic. That's the goal here, is to make them seem out of touch and unsympathetic, because the point here is to suck Elon Musk's dick.
Mimosas, a full microbrewery. They also had AA, which was kind of helpful for me. One day at a time.
Well, congratulations.
I actually don't remember seeing this part of this before, but like what's so the joke there, Babylon B, is that she is simultaneously still a drinker but also attending AA and has a sober chip. Like what like how like is this a real thing at Twitter? Did you do this amount of research into Twitter but not looked into what content moderation actually was as a job? That'd be weird. Or just half-assed. Or cherry picking.
Well, so I think I've seen everything that I need to see. Did you have any questions for us?
Tons. Okay, first, you don't actually, expect me to come into the office, do you?
Well, how do you expect to get any work done, labor done, stuff done at the factory without coming into the factory?
So right there, of course, realistically speaking, any position this person would be applying for could be done, remotely. Also, she just described doing a bunch of stuff in the office and then made it sound like she would rather never come into the office. So did she go into the office and play cornhole and get drunk, or did she work remotely? So this is just an inconsistency in the writing here. Why? Because once again, the goal here is not to present a coherent comedy narrative. The goal here is to create a propaganda narrative. The goal is to make this person seem uncharitably unlikable and out of touch.
Oh, so this is like a job.
The idea that they wouldn't know what kind of job they were applying for is ridiculous. Also, are they applying for a factory job? Hypothetically, why would you even hire them to do a floor job, a job on the floor of the factory, when all their talents and skills would be something like data entry?
Yeah, that might be a deal breaker for me. Also, I didn't notice any meditation rooms when I came in. Do you guys have any gurus on site, or is it more like a BYOG type situation?
BYO what?
Also, I didn't see a QR.
I don't know if that stands for bring your own guru or bring your own god. I like bring your own god better, but but I'm assuming it's guru. Okay, so right here, goal, also present them as out of touch for expecting a factory job to have meditation rooms. Also to present them as having, a lefty new age concept of spirituality.
Code for your lunch menu, but I assume your shrimp is non-GMO and cage-free.
Shrimp? Where'd you get shrimp? We don't have any shrimp.
So right there, that exchange also badly written. She's asking if they have shrimp, and he's acting like she got shrimp there somehow, which is actually a little bit funnier, but also doesn't make sense conversationally. Why would he think that she had shrimp there? That joke would only work if she literally had shrimp with her in the interview, which actually I would have given them points for that joke because it's a little absurdist. And so that's a thing. Maybe the Babylon Bee should lean into absurdism because this is because they're not good at satire. These are not well-constructed satire. This is not a well-constructed satire at all.
Hey, sorry to interrupt, boss. Pneumatic drill is on the fritz again. I need to go pick up some parts. I'll be back in 5.
He's got grease on his hand from trying to fix a machine. And we hear a horror sound. This is the closest thing to a satirical moment. The use of the horror music, I mean.
Ugh! What was on his hand?
It was grease.
How did it get there?
Because he does stuff, engages in manual labor.
Okay, so that's actually what he should have said is from a machine. He works with a machine. There are jobs that work does not necessarily put grease on your hands.
Hey, that's it. I can't do this. I'm sorry, Mr. Dunsinson. We've decided to go in a different direction.
All right, well, I'm sorry to hear that, miss.
No! No!
So right here, interesting choice to have the boss have grease on his hands. Okay, so like, what kind of factory is this where your boss is also, I mean, maybe this is a thing that happens. Does the boss do blue collar work here, or is he the kind of boss who sits in an office? I haven't worked in a factory, so I don't know necessarily how their hierarchy works. But in an office, the guy who would have his job wouldn't do shit with anyone who worked in the other areas.
No! No! No!
He runs out disgusted because he has grease on his hands. You see, the thing here is, and the reason this is bad satire is because it has mistaken identifying societal truths and propaganda. It has confused the two things, because what we are creating here is propaganda. This is propaganda. It's not satire. Now you could say, well, can't satire be propaganda? I mean, hypothetically, depending on how we're technically defining the word propaganda, you could get to that point. However, it's worth noting that, like I said, the key element of satire is some type of truth. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be a objective truth necessarily, like, oh, it takes place in the real world. A satire can lean heavier into a more fictional universe if that fictional universe's goal is still to present some type of truth to the audience about society. Now, a major problem with satire is that satire is frequently mistaken for the thing it's making fun of. You see, satire, a good example of a problem with satire is satire's failure to read to, people who can't understand metaphors, or who can't understand what who don't have great media literacy. Satire doesn't read well to that. An example of it, even though it's more of a parody than a satire. Well, no, I would argue it's a satire. The Beastie Boys song "Fight for Your Right to Party" is a song that is largely taken for what it appears to be, which is a song about being rebellious and partying. However, the song "Fight for Your Right to Party" is actually a song making fun of hair metal, making fun of the attitudes and general debauchery of that genre of music. Because hair metal had a heavy emphasis on having the attitudes of, yeah, fuck your parents, we're gonna party. And fuck your teachers, we're gonna party. And like, that's the general attitude of hair metal. And "Fight for Your Right to Party" is meant to be a joke on that, a spoof, a parody, a satire of that concept. In fact, actually, the fact that most people don't understand that it's making fun of that type of song is an implication that it is satire, because it has been because it is so closely resembling in style the thing it's making fun of that people mistake it for the thing it's making fun of. There was a famous story written a long time ago that was made to make fun of some of the famines in the United Kingdoms. And in that story, it talked about people eating their children. This wasn't, the thing is many people had outrage and believed it was true. However, it wasn't true. It was a dark joke about how fucking hungry everybody was. And then you have stuff like The Prince by Machiavelli. There is still an ongoing discussion as to whether or not it is a legit text about how to be a tyrannical dictator, or if it is a satire of backstabbing politics. Many believe it is satire, but there are still those who believe it is a legit guide to being a fascist piece of shit. So what is the Babylon Bee satirically? Well, nothing. What would I possibly have mistaken this sketch for? Oh, I would have mistaken it for satire if I didn't know what satire was. The construction of the joke is designed to play into biases that the viewer already has instead of imparting some type of message or commentary. The commentary here is, hey, don't feel bad for those people that Elon Musk fired. They're not like you. They don't do jobs like you. They're not working class. They're out of touch, liberal, Silicon Valley posers who don't know anything about life. That's the message that is put forward by this sketch. But the thing about that is it's not really an accurate satire. It doesn't understand how content moderation works, and it's making wide statements and assumptions about Silicon Valley work culture. So, yeah, to put a bow on it, the video is not satire. It's barely coherently written. The Babylon Bee is not good because the Babylon Bee, can you hear my cat? She's being very, she wants attention. I don't know if you can hear that or not. But so what I'm saying is the Babylon Bee is bad, and it essentially, its only true value is to show you how not to do satire. Because ultimately, the Babylon Bee is not satire. The Babylon Bee is propaganda. The Babylon Bee is propaganda. It wants you to think a certain way, and it doesn't care about the realities it's supposed to be making fun of. This is bad faith comedy because it has forgotten the most important rule in comedy. The truth part. The truth in comedy. Also, they really wanted to make this funny. They would have had them applying for a job at a fast food place. Or they would have shown them actually trying to do a job they weren't qualified for and show them struggling. Instead, we just had two people sitting in a room just playing stereotypes. And that's the thing about stereotypes, is that stereotypes are an appeal to your biases. Stereotypes are just a blank thing that is put into our general zeitgeist of our culture. Now, I know there's going to be some person out there going, but stereotypes are based in truth. And the fact of the matter about that is that that's not actually accurate. Stereotypes, while some of them can be based in truth, stereotypes can come from many, many different places and are not inherently accurate. For example, to give you a very non-controversial one right here, look at the French. We stereotype the French as being bad at war, but historically, this isn't actually accurate. France has won a little over half of the wars they've been involved in. We literally just categorize them for being bad at war because they lost 2 wars back to back. Never mind the fact that the loss of the second war was related to their loss in the first war, because they were not adequately prepared for the next war to come so soon. But the fact of the matter is that France historically has a long history of being a military country. In fact, for a long time, the reason they have a history of being involved in so many wars is because they were a mercenary state, like world police. Essentially, countries would go to war, and then they'd go to France to be like, hey, you want to give us some soldiers and guns? And France would be like, oui, we will come and murder your enemies. And so they would. France sent mercenaries and guns to the United States for both the Revolutionary War, and they sent guns and mercenaries to the North during the Civil War. France actually was involved in 2 of the biggest wars in American history on our side. So it's weird that we now have this viewpoint of France, but the truth is that the stereotype of France being bad at war is literally based on just two events. That's very minor. You may also notice that stereotypes frequently contradict each other. Various racial ethnicities are claimed to be both somehow lazy, but always doing the hard jobs in society. Think about that. That doesn't make sense. Why would a lazy person choose to do the hardest working jobs? It doesn't really add up. Also, the more dangerous stereotypes often try to present various ethnic groups as being simultaneously very powerful, but also simultaneously very weak. This, of course, also doesn't make sense. See, stereotypes aren't necessarily based on real things, and actually, especially some of the most racist stereotypes, are based on history out of context. For example, Jewish people are associated with moneylending, but the only reason Jewish people are associated with moneylending is for hundreds of years it was illegal for Christians to moneylend, or they would be thrown out of the church and have to be buried in an unmarked grave, like actors. Then you got stuff like, oh, black people like fried chicken. Well, black people liking fried chicken actually is based out of slavery, because you see, slave owners would give essentially the scraps of their animals that they were eating to the slaves to eat. Well, if you're mostly getting stuff like gizzards and other chicken organs, how are you going to make that fucking palatable? Oh, well, you could deep fry it. And so slowly over time, the deep fried chicken actually became, the good parts of chicken. Also, everyone loves, well, I'm a vegetarian, so I don't love fried chicken. But as far as I can tell, pretty much every race loves fried chicken. And then you have stuff like watermelon. Well, the reason that watermelon is associated with African Americans is actually economic oppression. You see, when the slaves were freed, many of them had to go into lives as farmers. And the most affordable crop, because guess what? If you've just been freed from slavery where you have no actual money, you're probably going to end up growing the most affordable crop was watermelon. So over time, watermelon became associated with African Americans in the South. Not because they liked it, but because due to the fact that the South was so economically oppressive to them, it was the only crop they could afford to sell. But of course, the white yokels were going on, oh, they must really like the watermelon. No, you dumb bitch. That's what they're growing because you forced them into absolute poverty. Also, 90% of everyone likes watermelon. It's a delicious fruit. So you see, sometimes stereotypes are based on lack of context and don't actually impart a real sense of truth. Appealing to stereotypes is not automatically a doorway to truth. Therefore, stereotypes are not satire. Stereotypes are a dumbing down of satire. Stereotypes are more heavily connected to pure comedy or stuff like commedia. Stereotypes don't have a place in satire because satire is a mixed comedy. It is meant to be a mix of the comedic and the tragic. This is where truth comes into the comedy. And stereotypes vary in whether or not they have any truth in them at all. Like, did you know it's a Scandinavian stereotype that redheaded people are untrustworthy tricksters because they believe they're connected to Loki? By the way, Loki in the original Norse mythology was a redhead. Nice redhead erasure, Disney. But yeah. So that was a Scandinavian stereotype on redheaded people. And as far as I can tell, redheaded people, not very tricksy. I'm not very tricksy. Ruben, your hair is pretty dark. It's auburn, so it's red to a degree. Auburn is like the the redhead, brown-haired equivalent of strawberry blonde, okay? My hair is 2 different colors. They're all just mixed together. Where was I? Okay, the point is that obviously these stereotypes don't have inherent truths in them. And neither does this Babylon Bee sketch. There, I said it. Babylon Bee is trash. Although it is fun making fun of them. Maybe I'll have to make fun of some more of their videos. All right. Thank you for watching / listening. Please, on the plus side, it just being 2 people in a room talking to each other will be easier for the people who are listening and not watching to understand. But where was I? Oh yes. Thank you for listening. If you like this podcast, please share it and talk it up to your friends and family who listen to podcasts. I know the intellectuals and pseudo-intellectual family members / people who just work out at the gym. So yeah. And wherever you're getting this podcast, please do whatever it is that makes it favorable on the algorithm. All right. Thank you for listening / watching. If you're watching it on Spotify, I'm Ruben, and I am not a parody account.